Hello and welcome to Autistic Radio for our live of the Sunday evening. We're here every Sunday and it's lovely that people are listening to us live but also finding the podcasts and joining us. I've just had a really lovely experience here on Autistic Radio. We have a drop-in session called the 444 just before this, and for an hour a group of people, quite a mixed bag at different times, different people join in, get together and discuss various things, and there's always a flavour about autism and sharing our own experiences and identifying things in each other's stories. And today I think was such a lovely example of that coming together. I was really taken that some people who have experimented with coming to us recently are already allowing their voices to be put out there for others to gain insight from, and that's really quick. That's an amazing thing for them to do. So yes, the 444 is there for anybody who wants to drop in, speak a little bit about their own situation or neurodivergence generally, and it's available as a podcast to listen to as well. Because this is the meeting that we discuss what we're doing here at Autistic Radio, besides keeping ourselves company and creating projects that give us a sense of meaning and achievement, there's the thing that we're doing at the moment that is foremost to my mind, and that's speaking with an organisation that uses positive behavioural support, PBS, based on behaviourism. Here in the United Kingdom that might be different to how it's described around the world, so it might not be what you expect with all of that stop the shock stuff. But still, we've been exposed to some material that, frankly, when we looked at it out of context, and it to us, I think we had to say that we came back with some negative ideas. It didn't feel great. But proud of what we're doing. We are achieving something because the researchers and the organisation are taking that back on board, and they're continuing a dialogue with us, and we're emailing between us. And then we're doing another look with more of the context. And so far, I have to say that having had false starts in the past where we have tried to work with researchers or with people who get paid to serve the autistic community, being a professional in their field, those false starts haven't got close to what we've managed to achieve so far. I think we've already made a success, that we have managed to create a model that we were involved right at the beginning, and we have been able to negotiate everything as we go along and change it. And that feels as though we may even get heard on the next stage, when some of our criticisms and some of our expectations of expressions of positive things, maybe they will get heard. Okay, so that's where we are at the moment. Harry, do you want to comment on that just before we join your programme?
Yes, I found the discussion that we've had and the work that we've been doing the last week or so has been very beneficial. And for what you've described from the stuff that we've seen, at first it's alarming. It sends alarm bells and it sounds quite patronising, etc. But then when we ask the questions from what we've been talking about and then get clearer answers, it doesn't sound as bad as it does, as it looked upon as feared. So it's there's progress there, and I'm quite happy to be part of that, and it's certainly worthwhile doing.
Any other business for the open meeting of Autistic Association? So thank you, and let's join Harry. Come on, Harry. What's happening in the 555 Live today?
Thanks, Jules. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 24th of August 2025. And this is where we go through the recent posts shared by others on our Facebook page. It's the radio Facebook page. And the first post is something a little bit different. But this is what we try to do when we do start. It's something a bit different. And the first post is from Much Spectrum, digital creator, a neurodivergent run storytelling studio advocating for empathy and inclusion. And what they've shared is about Tom Stoltman from Scotland, who's part of World's Strongest Man. And what it says is, from being bullied for being autistic to becoming World's Strongest Man, Tom Stoltman is redefining what strength looks like. He's not just lifting weights, he's lifting stigma. Diagnosed as autistic, Tom once struggled to leave the house. Now he's calling autism his superpower and using his platform to shift global perceptions. This post isn't about inspiration porn. It's about autistic pride, mental health, and how neurodivergent minds thrive when supported. Let's talk strength, the quiet kind, the focused kind, and what that. Let's talk strength, the quiet kind, the focused kind, the kind that changes lives. And they've shared a presentation, and it says, meet the world's strongest man who calls autism his superpower. Scottish strongman Tom Stoltman isn't just a 2 times world champion. He's also autistic, and he says that's exactly what helps him win. While other athletes hype up the crowd, punch their chest, and yell before lifts, Tom stays calm, quiet, focused. I don't go to first gear in qualifiers, he says. If I waste that energy, I'm drained before finals. Tom is 6 foot 8 inches, 190 kilos, and eats 10,000 calories a day. But 10 years ago, he hated gym. He was bullied in school, felt ashamed of being autistic, and nearly gave up. I locked myself in my house. I was ready to end it all. It was his older brother who dragged him to the gym. Slowly lifting became routine. Then it became purpose. Then it became power. The gym saved me, Tom says. His hyper-focus, structure and tunnel vision, all linked to his autism, turned into his edge. In 2023, Tom nearly didn't make it to the World's Strongest Man finals. He had to win the most brutal event of all, a stone off, lifting giant boulders over hurdle to one-man breaks. Tom didn't even flinch. They even called him the King of the Stones. Now he's gunning for a 3rd world title, something only 2 men have ever done. But Tom doesn't want just trophies. I want to be an ambassador for people with autism, to change how people look at it. He regularly gets messages from kids, parents, adults in their 40s, all saying the same thing. You're calling autism a superpower changed my life. It doesn't mean life is easy. It means difference can be powerful. If you're unfamiliar with autism, Tom's advice is simple. Just ask, kindly. We don't get offended, we feel seen. That's all he ever wanted, and that's what he gives others. What's people's thoughts on this particular post? Particularly on the term superpower.
I immediately felt prejudice, Harry, because I'm not very into sport in a big way. I mean, I'm into information about sport, but the practical side. So when I saw this initially, just image-wise, I thought, oh, don't think this is my cup of tea. But the more I looked at the words and read it, then I got drawn in because this is something else. This isn't just that kind of hyped up kind of sports phenomenon that surrounds us all the time. Highly commercialised, really loud, a lot of stuff I don't like. But this has got a message in it, this has got a reality, this has got a history, a life. It's brilliant. I like it.
I've never really been a big fan of the use of the word superpower, but I can see how it fits in this particular sort of scenario. I mean, it's impressive beyond impressive where he's come from and where he's gone to. And I really enjoyed that he said that he stays calm because he knows that he has to keep that energy up. And I think, yeah, this is kind of like him saying that he'll be drained. Like, we all have a bit of burnout, but if you overdo it, if he overdid it, then he wouldn't be able to, be part of this. So, yeah, it's very impressive. I mean, although I don't like that word superpower when they attach it to it, because, this is something that's in him. It's not a superpower, it's just his power.
I agree with that sentiment about if there was a time when it was appropriate to fit it within the narrative, this is one of them. It's used inappropriately in other places, and this seems to kind of work with the idea that it is a powerful person, it's a concentration thing, and it is something about his autism that makes him more powerful in his actual chosen sport. So I think that's interesting. And I think it's interesting because I had the same kind of prejudices right from the beginning that Raymond discussed. Just looking at, oh no, it's sport, but then seeing into it, and it felt really uplifting as it was being read. Nice bit of work by Harry there.
And I quite like that. This isn't really about. We're not looking at the sport. We're looking at somebody just finding their focus and finding the thing that suits them. The thing that makes their life, good, and that gives them drive, and gives them a bit of fight. So it's yeah. I mean, I looked at it first and went, oh goodness, okay. But I can see that how this all ties in. He's found his thing that kind of motivates him and makes him feel like he's got a purpose.
There's also this thing about performance, I think, and being seen and participation, which seems to be happening here. But one of the off-putting things I find sometimes about sport is this high performance thing. Performances, I have difficulties with it. So, but to see it working this way, in this positive way, and it would be a participation, which often, autistic people can struggle with.
I get the impression this guy's making decisions for himself, independently of influence outside. I don't know why I get that, but I have a good feeling about that. And I think that's a bit different to that phrase that they said. What was it? something porn to do with, is it public
Inspiration porn.
Inspiration porn. Yes, that's the one, Harry. Thank you. Yeah, that phrase inspiration porn, that, I don't know, it's not that. It's actually managed to do what it says, not be that, but also be kind of inspirational.
What I like about it is, even though at first it may sound a bit kind of patronising or whatever, what's good about it is as you read into it, it's something that can inspire people, not for or just for the thing he's talking about, not just the sport he's involved in, but that people who are autistic people, or people with autism, whatever way you want to put it, can be successful in life. And I know that sounds quite plain and quite patronising in itself, but sometimes it needs to be said, because a lot of things regarding autism, especially to children, it's all kind of doom and gloom to an extent. Like, you always need help, you always need support, and that isn't a bad thing. Always needing support, but it gives this sort of doom and gloom kind of element to your life. Like, your life is not going to be as successful or so-called successful as others. So it kind of shows that you can thrive. It shows you can have goals, you can have successful lives being autistic. And I know there's all these different sort of, it's like a spectrum thing in itself. Like, people are very successful, people that aren't. But it shouldn't be talking about being successful as in terms of winning a championship or winning tournaments. Sometimes being successful is just being happy, or at least being content, which I feel that I am in my life. Is content, feeling satisfied of what's been achieved so far and what is yet to be achieved. Just enjoy living. And that's a sort of thing that many people who are certainly feeling quite down about themselves, quite vulnerable, to see that sort of thing, I believe, would help so many.
Yeah, that or finding a purpose.
I think the reason that it works so well is that it's his voice explaining his superpower, and it is very thoughtful and nuanced. It's not like a sportscaster oversimplifying it or turning it into inspiration porn.
In a society which focus on the negative, it shows autistic strengths.
Good for him, but and he can call it a superpower. That's fine. I don't consider it a superpower because I don't consider that there's anything really extraordinary about me.
I'm a bit confused by that, GR. I see a disconnect between my experience of you and your explanation of the things that you've done and the qualities that you've brought to those things, and you saying that you don't think there's anything special about yourself. There's a disconnect that doesn't fit with me. It feels as though some of the things that you have done that are extraordinary would only be done by you because you're autistic, and also putting yourself in the situations you've put yourself in. There's a lot of bravery about the things that you have done in your life, I have got to know you in the short period I have got to know you.
I mean, it could just be modest. I am modest, but a friend of mine recently, he when I was telling him about all these things, the podcasts and everything, he described me as extraordinary, and I don't know. maybe my awareness of self doesn't stretch to that sort of description.
Yeah, but do you see where I'm getting at? It's you're recognizing that you are autistic and that you're different, and it's starting to make sense for you. And you tell us stories about. I don't know. In the same situation, it seems as though maybe it's just us. Maybe that's what we do as autistic people. We hide our light under our bushel. We underestimate. Is that where you're getting at?
It's possible. When I think back about my life in general, and like you're having a conversation with someone, you say, anyway, so when I was in the Midwest of America, and those experiences are different, and they're things that these people haven't, not autistic people, I mean just the general people around, and they're going like, wow, incredible. And it's like, well, no, I just went to this place and this is what happened. Maybe maybe it's an English stiff upper lip sort of thing as well.
Maybe you think that the things that you've done are so extraordinary that there won't be a link. It'll look as though you're blowing your own trumpet or putting them down or some way, and so you have adopted a way of kind of retracting it in some way. Is that autistic?
I don't know if that's autistic, but it comes back to, the story I've shared when I started at school and I could read, and then I was made to read a book out loud. And then the teacher, because I stumbled on a word, humiliated me in front of the whole class. And I just never felt that. I don't like to feel boastful or try one-upmanship. Maybe that's back to that experience.
I really feel privileged that you answered me in those ways, and I think that's also part of your autism. You took my questions and you just decided to answer them. Thank you so much.
I say it's just me. It's just me, who I am.
I can totally empathise with that early age experience of being made quite vulnerable, and how socially later in life you almost unconsciously don't want to expose yourself to that again. It's not even thought out. But I think we do recognise things sometimes, and we tend to want to, like if we see it in others, we want to avoid it in ourselves sometimes. So we can have a resistance to certain forms of expression.
Yeah, but you know what, Raymond? In the conversations I remember us having in India, when we were talking about some of our early experiences, I feel so privileged in that I haven't had to concern myself too much with this for many decades. It's something I feel privileged to have almost left behind, but I recognise it around me.
Sorry, what in particular have you left behind?
The need to self-deprecate.
That's something I've really got to work on, to be honest. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at self-deprecation. I do a lot. I put myself down an awful lot. I mean, really, and have been able to do certain things I should be kind of patting myself on the back for, but I tend to kind of do myself down, I suppose, because I feel that I don't meet the mark in certain environments and spaces. So, I see that as failure, although I can't really help it, if that makes sense.
When I found that when I was being bullied through school, and then when I found that if you use humour, they tend to leave you alone, and part of humour can be self-deprecate. No, I can't even say that word. New teeth, running them in for the dog.
what I tend to do, and I quite enjoy doing it actually, is play down what I do. And I'm aware that I can do, got some skills and certain things that I do, but I play it down because I don't want to boast about it. I think a lot of it's to do with safety, but a lot it's to do with expectations in myself not getting too high and not to put pressure on anybody else. And things that I've done and people have been amazed by, I've not actually understood. What do you mean? Somebody actually said I was quite unique in the stuff that I do. What I do is kind of admin stuff. I'm involved with local community councils and things like that. And I do a lot of the admin, like the engine room sort of thing. As if we're discussing something, I'm the one that does the letters and emails, etc. And I try and do it in a timely manner. And many people are impressed by that. But the way I look at it is why wait if you can do it quicker? So I try and play it down. And I think a lot of us do that as either a safety mechanism. But then there's people who go the other way. As Lucy says, is some people actually put themselves really down, really self-judgmental, just harsh critic on themselves. And it's a difficult thing to get out of.
I think we've been knocked. I think we've been knocked. It's a learnt response, isn't it? And we're going below the level. We're not, instead of having a situation where it's boasting being too much and realism being in the middle, we go below it. Whereas, why can't we just go up to middle without feeling as though we're going to boasting?
I work for a certain government department, and one day I get called in the office and the guy says, "You're very good at your job, but you don't talk to people. When people bring you work, you just talk about the work and then you don't talk to the person." And so I was in this weird situation where most places they say, "Oh, you talk too much and you need to get on with your work." I had the exact opposite. I never worked that one out.
I think for me this is a sensitive subject. It's something that is really striking me. The more I get out there to know more autistic people who aren't my family members or previous friends that I knew, this predisposition for autistic people to put themselves down and suppress themselves for protection is something that is really current in my head.
I worked where I worked once. There's this guy was always running himself down, and I said, you shouldn't really bother running yourself down because wherever you go in life, there'll always be a queue of people who want to do that for you. So it's best just to get on with things.
Your reaction's a bad thing too, in public social stuff. If you're the quiet one, people will assume things. They will think you're snooty or too good for them or stuff like that, or just strange, because they're so used to a certain way of behaving that if you're not like that, then it's difficult, and the onus is on you to compromise with them and put yourself through a bit of stress in order to mask and act up.
I once had a conversation with someone. I used to be really, really mute a lot of the time in social situations, and the friends. I say laughingly because they didn't feel like them after this, but they said to me that there was something weird about me, that I put walls up, that what did they say? Said I was intimidating, which I just didn't get at all. And that's all because of the fact that I didn't really speak, and because I was quiet, and because I didn't feel like I wanted to be part of the conversation. They found that intimidating. and that's always stuck with me because I feel like I'm the least intimidating person in the room generally.
I've had that experience too, where I think I was so quiet, and my impression would be that people would think that was very strange, when in fact I think they thought it was aloof or worse, that I had disdain for them, and I didn't at all.
We should get little call cards printed up that say, "I love you, honestly," and put it down on the table.
The next post. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please carry on, Harry.
The next post is from Waymakers Devon, who are a non-profit organisation. Waymakers is a community interest company committed to neurodiversity, acceptance and inclusion. And in the picture itself that they've shared is Waymakers works with autistic, ADHD and AUDHD adults and young people without significant learning needs. We deliver neuro-affirming support one-to-one and in groups, mainly across Northern Devon in England and UK. Our short survey that they're sharing is all for you that have had the lived experience or are as an ally. And what the post says as well is what the post is sharing is quotes from different people regarding groups, etc. And what it says is, I've tried different things, but till now no one's really got how I experience the world differently. Another one says, I don't feel comfortable accessing groups. There seems to be too many social expectations that are uncomfortable for me. Another one says, I really benefit from having someone who recognises me for who I am, not who other people think I should be. So these are some of the things we've heard over the years, and we're still listening. As we consider our next group support, we want to know what you or your loved ones most need or want. What might that look like and offer you? So please respond to our short survey. If you're neurodivergent, without significant learning needs, adult or young person, or you are the partner, friend, parent, or carer for a neurodivergent adult or young person. And the links are being provided. And the National Autie Community Fund has supported this initiative. So what's people's thoughts on this post?
My first reaction, Harry, is the phrase significant learning needs. It kind of threw me slightly because I then began thinking, well, why say that, you know? But then again, I understand why. But then again, do I? You know, so thinking about significant learning needs, you can have learning needs that are very variant, you know. A lot of us may seem to be quite able or capable, but we may have significant learning needs in the sense of our communication is difficult. And so when I see that phrase, I sometimes get this feel, and I'm not suggesting this group or suggesting this, but it seems to indicate or imply you're not trying hard enough. If you see what I mean. That may be a heavy distraction, so I'm sorry if it is.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to differentiate from a lot of services that are geared towards helping people with autism are linked to learning support, learning difficulties. I'm trying to find what's the right kind of way forward now. What's the right kind of what's the right terminology now? But basically, it's looking beyond that, because sometimes things are all put the same sort of, label. So it's just trying to, I think, basically just look beyond, because everyone's different, and it's just the way that they described that. And the survey itself, the introduction, is what it's called is a community listening exercise, understanding what matters to you and how to best deliver support. So help shape the future of support for autistic and neurodivergent people. We are waymakers. We work to support opportunities and outcomes for autistic and AUDHD adults and young people aged 14 and up without significant learning needs. This includes those with and without a formal identification of their needs. This is a survey for people living in the North Devon, Torridge area. It is for neurodivergent people without significant learning needs, autistic ADHD, AUDHD, otherwise combination of neurodevelopmental differences, and their allies. It's anonymous, and it's designed to take no more than 10 minutes, and most of it is multiple choice. And it's available in other formats, and you can contact an email address to get that. You can fill in this survey yourself or with a support from a trusted person, and then it goes into the survey itself. So it's trying to be as accommodating as much as possible and trying to be as comforting as possible. Because as we all know, surveys, that sort of thing, certainly my experience, can be very draining, especially if you're describing yourself. So it's good that they're going to put this approach towards it and try to be as inclusive and supportive as possible. And having confidence that, basically pouring your heart out into this survey is actually going to make a difference, moving forward. Because as we've felt before, or many of us have felt before, is that we've told our life stories for a certain project, for certain people asking questions, questionnaires, etc., but then feel nothing comes from it. So you feel that you've poured your heart out for nothing. And that's why things become so difficult when working with organisations.
It looks to me as though part of this is about the same kind of space that we have for the 444, the drop-in, the self-help kind of area, the talk to each other, the networking. And I'm not going to have the opportunity to put my ideas down on this survey, so I'll put my ideas out there anyway. What helped me was being able to experience something without taking part, to be a fly on the wall in the background, watch over from the shadows the grown-ups by the campfire to understand what was going on, to use a metaphor, and then find my way in through text, and then after that maybe use my voice. And I found that in most spaces, however they worked, I didn't get those. What I got was in the glaring spotlight, this is something that you have to commit to, it's going to be on this day, and that didn't feel great for me. So the way for me to make sure that spaces are inclusive is to make so many different ways for people to approach them very slowly and gradually, without commitment and without lots of email communication, just ease of access, and also anonymously.
My first experience of a podcast was when I jumped in with both feet and spoke to somebody who didn't know anything about autism. And I got into that conversation with them and found myself sort of drowning because I found it so very difficult. It was like being in the glaring spotlight, having to tell somebody what this feels like, what it looks like from the inside was very difficult. So, it's nice to be able to listen and hear other people of us who have similar or even slightly different sort of ways than I've got. But when you're talking to somebody who's just doing a podcast about autism, sometimes it felt really quite scary. I didn't do very well. I was really embarrassed when I'd finished. But, so there are spaces that are safe and there's some that feel a little bit more edgy.
The next post is from Cara Cater, autistic educator, who is an educational consultant, an autistic educator with a passion for helping teachers and families support autistic children. And they shared the following. Sometimes I underestimate just how exhausting the week can be. I know teaching is tiring, and I know living in this world as an autistic person is tiring. And I know I tend to take on some extras, which is also tiring. And then I get to the weekend and feel just how tired I am, and I'm still kind of shocked. It shouldn't be this hard, right? But that feels shaming, like I've done something wrong. And maybe the wrong thing I've done is just not taking adequate care of myself throughout the week. But it helps to just acknowledge sometimes that it is hard. Whether it should or shouldn't be, it just is. And feeling exhausted by a job I love, a job I pour myself into, isn't the worst thing in the world. I dare say it's worth it. But I'm looking forward to figuring out how to do it without this level of overwhelm, if that day ever comes. What's your thoughts?
I wonder if it's the expectations of society. I think my daughter once described it to me as it's part of the capitalist world. I don't understand this still, but to feel, and this could be for any person of, just everybody on earth, to feel shame in needing downtime, to feel like you always must be productive, to take on more. I'm not saying she shouldn't be taking on. I'm saying she shouldn't feel shame, but it would be really hard not to in the world that we're living in.
I'm interested in that word shame. I went to the neurodivergent conference in Glasgow, and there was a presentation there by a researcher, an autistic person, and they found a way of describing some of the most difficult things using the word shame, saying how shame had been put upon the population in various different ways. So I think there might be something of a theme around that word that we would do well to consider for ourselves and maybe let go of.
productivity is a big thing, especially for me. It's like if I feel that I'm not producing or making an effort, so to speak, it's like there's this bad feeling that, feeling stale, or just feeling that you're not contributing. And it took me a long time to accept downtime, to accept, you need rest, and to just do things when you can. Because I've got a strange sleeping pattern. Sometimes generally I only sleep for a couple of hours, so sometimes I'm up during times where other people are sleeping and doing things, and then if I feel that I've done something, it's that sort of satisfaction. But there's this sort of societal sort of thing, like you must do things a certain way, and you must produce or contribute in a certain way, because if you're not worthwhile. And I think that does kind of impact a lot of autistic people. And I think the other thing is the expectation is you want to, because you're good at something and a lot of the time you've got the energy to do something, you just feel bad if there's one day where you don't feel that you can do it. It's just that sort of maybe perfectionism, maybe just that passion. There's a lot of things that come into it, and it can affect you psychologically. But there's ways of getting around it as well and coping.
I feel as if there might be a shame upon shame. So she's talking about this productivity shame, which I addressed, but then I feel as if when you made your comment, Jules, you might have been talking about another layer of shame, which I think we do also have. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, I don't feel as though I'm prepared to run through all the ideas that went through my head listening to this particular person. So I tried to introduce it or magnify that word and wonder. And I think you're onto it as well, that yes, there are other layers of it, and it is put upon us, and it is societal manipulation and familial manipulation and capitalist manipulation. There are various aspects to it, and I think the autistic population is at the end of it to a greater degree than the general population. And I see that I have a feeling that these layers of shame end up in a contribution to our unrepresentatively large issues with mental health and eating disorders and suicide and crime rates and unusual behaviours. I believe that there are these layers that work upon us, that maybe if we were more aware of them, we would be able to steel ourselves or bend with the wind and resist by allowing them to go past us or through us,
Like maybe there's a basic self-support education anyone can be given, whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical. Because we often assume the neurotypical society benefits neurotypically orientated people, whereas neurodivergent people may struggle, may be contrary, may fight against it, may also want to be a part of it, but struggle to know how to, because they have these different influences pulling at them. So maybe there is some kind of core self-support thing that should be prioritised for just anyone at a young age, so that when they begin to discover where they are oriented on a neurological level or whatever, or a self-identifying level, they can cope.
Yeah, you're actually talking about revolutionary education, like some of the different experiments that have been tried. Woodcraft folk and the not Montessori. There's another group of educators that have a very natural, soft parenting, gentle parenting way around them, attached to nature. So yeah, you might be talking about that kind of thing as an educational basis to give people that strength or resilience.
It's a shame though that those cost a fortune. I'm not really into methods. I'm into just being open to the fact that we may be living a lie, in the sense of all the norms that are produced by our society and layered onto us as conditioning. When I think about it, I can't actually prove any of them, and so I'd rather be a bit more open-minded about what's going on and into possibilities rather than just working with, no, this is a fact. This is history. This is what's done. This is how it's done.
Yeah, I take your point. What you're saying is if it's a system, if it's an education system like Waldorf, somebody's put in the text there, or Steiner, then it's a certain class of people that get that education. What we really need is a kind of generalized understanding as people that it's kind of ranged against us the way things are organized. We've badly organized things for ourselves, and we need to open it up for everybody in a way. Utopia.
Well, not quite utopia. It's not that hard. I think we just need to be human beings.
Something tells me that if you go back, not too far back in time, in smaller societies, not special societies, just smaller places, there was more room for people's energy levels, people's differences, because it seems to me all of the people who really could see it in you and make that space for you were older people from smaller places, if that's making any sense at all.
The next post is from ICANN Network Limited, which is a non-profit organisation. ICANN Network Limited is Australia's largest autistic-led organisation. 50% of our team are autistic. We deliver group mentoring in schools and via online settings. We share our insights through talks and consultancy. And what they've shared is communication tips for school leaders. Being firm but fair with a growth mindset is key when working with families of neurodivergent students. Many parents feel their concerns are dismissed. Therefore, listening, validating, and communicating clearly builds trust without being overly cautious. For instance, lead with inclusive stories. In newsletters, assemblies, parent-carer evenings, and open nights, share the unique achievements of neurodivergent adults. This signals to all families, including those with undiagnosed students, that your school is a safe and supportive place and helps reduce fear around labels. Communicate change clearly. Neurodivergent students may process change differently, so make sure your messages reach everyone. Use multiple channels like web portals, digital and print newsletters, emails, and even informal chats in the schoolyard to ensure important information gets through. Clear, inclusive and multi-channel communication builds stronger connections with families and support every student's access, every student's success. This resource is part of the Victorian Department of Education's funded expansion of ICANN to all the Victorian government schools, and is a presentation attached. I'll let people come in at the moment. What's people's thoughts?
I think this thing about communicating with parents is going to come up with the project with the behavioural services people, because they are contacting parents in that.
Moving on to the presentation. It's called ICANN Communication Tips, Inclusive Practices Tip Sheet. And it says, be firm but fair with a growth mindset. Many parents with neurodivergent children often feel that the concerns are dismissed by school leaders. So listen to them, validate the experience, avoid being overly cautious, and communicate clearly and directly. The support mainstream parent and care understanding. Use your communications to support mainstream care and parent. Use your communications to support mainstream parent carer understanding and your undiagnosed students. Share stories of neurodivergent adult achievements in newsletters, assemblies, and events. Signals that your school is safe for neurodivergent students, diagnosed or undiagnosed, and helps reduce fear of labels. Impact of inclusive messaging. School leaders can make a big impact through signals they send in school newsletters, assemblies, parent-carer evenings, and open nights. Communicating change. Regular communications around change are crucial. Neurodivergent students may process change differently. General messages may not always reach them. Multiple channels for reach. To improve reach, diversify your methods, like parent-carer portals, digital and print newsletters, emails, and in-person debriefs in the schoolyard. Multiple channels, more families reached. For clear, inclusive, and multi-channel communication, it builds trust with all families and supports neurodivergent students. Listen, grow, support. What's people's thoughts?
I agree with GR. We can look at this and use it and reassign it and repackage it to make it clearer in the project with the PBS group on how they should perhaps communicate some of the messages that for us we had difficulty with. I think GR's onto something.
I think I'm just putting myself into the headspace of me when I was very young and at school, and I'm looking at this and thinking, so much of this is just basic. That would actually suit everybody, really, wouldn't it? If everything was just so clear and straightforward, and you knew all the rules, it's like a sort of a just being kind sort of environment, because there are people even in a normal mainstream school. Who are going to be quicker at getting used to change or slower. You know, it's kind of like a bit of a template for everybody in a sort of a way, and one of which I would have been very grateful for when I was sort of 6 years old and sitting in a classroom feeling bewildered.
I really wonder where it says when dealing with parents, don't be overly cautious. And I would say the exact opposite, because what a parent, so I'm not a parent, but I wonder how a parent perceives their child and their child's behavior, if they really, if you have to be cautious, because you could accidentally infer that the child's behavior is the parent's fault. So I think you have to be a lot more it's not a one-line solution for this sort of thing. It's an issue. I'm not a parent. I wouldn't really like to get sucked into it too much, but that's just what I think.
I hear what you're saying there. I'm wondering if the operative word there is overly cautious, because I'm fairly sure the teaching professions are already cautious about how they describe children to their parents. What it's trying to say is broach the subject, actually have the conversation, actually have some communication, and don't avoid it by being overly cautious and stop that communication happening.
I might be a little cautious when I'm looking at this, and it may just be that in Australia they're further ahead. And so I was a neurodivergent child. Now I realize that, and I feel the same way that Lucy did. But the thing that's really resonating with me is because school seemed to be part of the problem, or a difficult place for neurodivergent children, it's good that they have this messaging. But the thing that is ringing out to me like a small alarm bell is I'm not sure that they are, well, certainly in Canada, the school system is not further along than the parents, and this seemed a little bit patronizing, as if perhaps they were more expert than the parents might be. I know in Canada, and I think I should add, both of my children are neurodivergent and they're adults now. We tended to communicate to the school about what we would like to see for our child each year, not trusting that they would be further along than we would be, if that makes sense.
It does. What ICANN Network is trying to do is describe an ideal and influence individuals in teaching professions towards behaviours that might help them in their personal dealings.
That makes sense. And the whole thing is very positive then. It sort of, it just makes more sense now that this is the ideal for everybody. It's like, here's a framework to be a better version of whoever you are in the school system.
I think it's an attempt at a shortcut to describing better communication to a system that doesn't like to be told what to do, and making it seem as though it's their idea anyway, and that they're doing most of these things and they just need to join them together a bit better, because nobody likes being told what to do. So I think the language is leading.
The next post. Hold on.
Does somebody want to read that?
It's okay. It's kind of caught myself out there. The next post is from Autistic and Living the Dream, which is a personal blog. A PH student, researcher, speaker and trainer, queer, disabled and very tired, based in the UK. And what they've shared is their own blog. And the way it's been presented is not the way that I intended, so that's why I was a wee bit kerfuffled there. So what they're sharing, it's called, in the link, it's called Embracing Authenticity in Academic Presentations. I've had the absolute pleasure of talking at several events and conferences this year, including Beyond Reflections Trans Plus Conference, FGN's Trans Liberation Now, and TVCE's first annual symposium. Despite talking about a queer subject in queer places, I still find myself trying to fit the normative way of presenting. Normative not just through using slides and references, but using academic speak. For wordwank as one participant in my RES suggested. Trying to get the right amount of info, trying not to rabbit hole, working out when we can swear, how much and what to extent. I don't go much on masking. I prefer to call my experiences autistic shielding, but I can see myself doing it more in academic spaces. David Gray Hammond's Autistic Mental Health Conference on August 16th was a great chance for me to try again. It was hybrid and I had a great turnout in person, including other autistic speakers. Emma Dalmain from Autistic Inclusive Meets started the event, and then it was me. I sat for the whole presentation and had my slides in front of me. I didn't have to think about how to move my body. I'm still getting used to standing still with a walking stick. And I didn't have to remember what I was talking about. Keeping on track was easier without having to look over my shoulder. And keeping an eye on my pain and body movement was easier while sitting down. What I do with my body and my stick, oh my God, I have to talk to these people and then they may have questions. And that's me at every conference I talk at. Being with the attendees was also easier. There is something about being in a room full of autistic people and our close supporters that makes me feel at ease. It feels okay that people have questions because I know I share some life experiences with them. I knew many people joining online and in person, so it felt like having a conversation with friends about my favourite topic. I had also prepared, by which I mean practice over and over again until I annoyed myself, what I wanted to say before I started presenting. Hello and a visual description, as per the usual, but something extra this time. I told the room that I was thankful to be there with them, and that I am unlearning normative ways of talking and presenting. I informed them that there would be rabbit holes, swearing, and personal stories. I offered the audience not a presentation, but an opportunity to meander together. I have used that term previously at another symposium and it feels right. Presenting on my research takes a lot of thought. Trying to be understood, sharing important information, having people understand, care and engage. Most importantly, I want to make good use of the stories entrusted to me. There's a part of me I share at every presentation. The wording is not there, but we, our. I'm not talking about a distinct group. I am talking about myself and my community. And in academic spaces, even queer and neurodivergent ones, that's more difficult than I thought it would be. What's people's thoughts?
When I worked at Ordnance Survey, I used to do presentations all the time, and I mean, I knew the product, technical and business, back to front. There was nothing you could throw at me that I couldn't deal with. But I really don't know if you said to me, stand up in front of someone and do a 20-minute presentation on autism, on my autism, because I'm not an expert on autism, I'm an expert on my autism. I honestly don't know how I would approach that. I'd find it quite difficult, I think.
Harry, you will remember many years back and me explaining to you that speaking to a room was something that I really couldn't do. And I'd had times in my life where speaking in front of an audience was required of me and it had gone really badly. However, during these years, as we've discussed our own autism, and it feels like it's a subject that's so accessible to me, I no longer have the fear of doing any kind of presentation, whether it be here on Autistic Radio or in front of a camera or at a conference of professionals. It's just a different ball game. And what was described there of where she got to, or they got to, a sense that they were riffing and going off their own subject because of where they were and being amongst the autistic group and the familiarity of other people. I feel as I'm there now, fortunately, by just walking up to a group of professionals, and I don't just sit down. I walk around. I stim. I walk up and down, and I make it up as I go along. And I don't have a presentation sorted out. It's made up on the spot. And the preparation that they said, if you do all of that, and you do that again and again and again, and then just go ad lib and just go and talk about it with a few prompts, I think is probably where they're getting to.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I can remember what you're talking about. And I feel in some ways I'm in that kind of position myself. Because what used to put me in a state, not just in presentations, but just over preparing for anything, like preparing to talk about something in particular. What I've noticed is what makes me more comfortable is obviously knowing my audience, but being confident within myself and knowing what I'm talking about and not to over prepare too much. And if I do prepare, not to go script by script. It's more like using that as a guide and just do it in a certain way which is comfortable at the time. You know, using humour. I'm not comfortable enough to do the swearing right enough that many people do. It's just not my style that way, and I can understand why folk do it, and I've seen it done very effectively, and it does work. So I can relate to a lot of what was said in that post and what was said in that article, and for what you've said yourself, Jules, because a lot of stuff that we have talked about and plan to talk about, which is quite, intense, and if there's methods of making it less intense but still effective, I mean, it can only be a good thing.
And just to clarify, I can only do it about autism.
I've obviously I'm a rookie at this, but I've done the talking in front of people thing, and just find that I was so tense. I feel in a way, you know, I feel better now. I've done it a few times because I know that pretty much everybody there is. I don't feel like I'm standing there waiting to be bombarded with anything bad. I know that they're probably going to listen and be patient whilst I'm doing it, and I do obviously sometimes lose my place and have to use my words that I've got written down. But I'm starting to feel more confident in the space now. Yes, I think it's just doing it over and over again will help. You know, when I do little meetings and things like that and stood in front of rooms of people, you know, when you come out of that, there's a certain buzz as well, that when you get that buzz, that little bit of adrenaline is quite good, and it drives you to do the next one, and maybe next time it'll feel even better.
Robbie expresses that he has to put a script together to talk in front of people. And I would say that if you do manage to go off the script and it works out, that's where you get the buzz from, I reckon.
Well, it's nice to see people sort of nodding or agreeing or being affirmative, and you know, you can go off script a little bit because you realise that you're getting somewhere with it, and you know, people are looking at you and being interested, and that's kind of an adrenaline rush, and it feels good.
What I've learned is what to do and what not to do. I mean, I've been to many conferences, not always autism, you know, been to housing conferences, I've been to mental health conferences through different things that I've done. And the worst presentations, that, in my opinion, that come to me is ones that stick too much to the script. It's like someone reading, you know, just reading from the paper, not lifting their head. And I'm talking about people like, you know, politicians, which it may be deliberate, but people in these kind of high positions, they've got these certain kind of styles, which, and even though they're talking about something quite interesting, the way they're delivering it becomes quite stale and boring. And I feel that that's the case because many of them are being too formal and not human enough. But if you go off script a little bit and you lift your head and you tell a daft joke, or, you know, be humorous, or not even do that. I mean, just, you know, just go off script a little bit. It feels more human, and it shows your enthusiasm a lot more, and more people will be engaged. And I feel that that's very important. And I've just seen so many that I've been inspired by, you know, that I've been single. I could never do that. And it's just people talking away, especially people talk about their own experiences, you know, warts and all sort of thing. You're going, you know, that's quite, you know, they're kind of exposing their life experiences. You know, it's a lot of things I would want to hide in, but, and then you're inspired by that because of the way they're doing it in a certain way, they're doing it in a, dare I say, entertaining way, but education as well. So there's a lot to take in from how people deliver things, and there's a lot of ways of how the people can prepare for it and not to make yourself ill over it either. There's just different methods, and even though I've kind of said there's ways that I'm not really kind of keen on, I shouldn't say that any way is wrong. It's just different ways.
My manager, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. I received a lot of training on public speaking, which I suppose was helpful, but a bit like Jules. I think it's once I got it under my belt, sort of like learning the rules of public speaking and then knowing how to break them, which then allows you to be yourself. But I still have one thing that I can never do, and it's using certain terminology that has to do with an association, you know, about making motions and all of that parliamentary talk. I can't do it. And I honestly think it's because I think it's stupid, and I just cannot get the phrasing of it right.
What Robbie says is talk about your own experiences, make it authentic, which I totally agree with. Makes it more human and more engaging.
My boss was supposed to do a presentation on geodesy and GPS at the Royal Institute of Navigation. And the guy she was supposed to do it with, who had a doctorate in geodesy, dropped out about a week before. And then she phoned that morning and said, I'm sick. And I just jumped to the challenge. I had a copy of the presentation, the PowerPoint slides. I printed off all the stuff off of a GPS website, wrote a 20-minute presentation in the 2 hours going up on the train, stood up, gave the presentation 19 minutes, no questions, luckily, because I couldn't have answered them. And in true sense, I was winner chicken dinner, because I did have a free chicken dinner out of it. And I got a year's honorary membership of the Royal Institute of Navigation. And I think part of that was my autism meant that in the 2 hours I was on that train, I just literally just soaked up everything I could. It's a bit of a sort of savant thing, really. But still, I don't know about if I had to do a presentation on autism. Other things, give me a book and I'll knock it down into a 20-minute presentation. But about myself, I don't know.
There's a bit more from Robbie. We read each other's stuff out if we're not using our voice. After saying that he had to put a script together to talk in front of people, he also said he took part in training people to support neurodivergent people, and that was a big achievement for him. And he said that talking about your own experience makes it authentic. And everybody that shares a different experience shows how we are all different and how autism is so changeable and various.
The next post is from Autistic Flair, which is a community page. Autistic Flair is an online community and resource hub dedicated to amplifying autistic voices to change perceptions of autism to create a more inclusive society. And it's about autistic masking. And it says, autistic masking can become second nature. For many of us, masking becomes our default. We slip into survival mode, doing whatever it takes to blend in. Over time, we don't even notice just how much we adapt. While masking can help us feel safe, it's exhausting. And here are some examples in the presentation of how autistic masking can show up in day-to-day life. In 14 ways. It's called 14 Ways Autistic People Mask Without Even Realising It. For many of us autistic folks, masking becomes the default. We slip into survival mode, doing whatever it takes to blend in. Over time, we don't even notice just how much we adapt. Examples of autistic masking you might not even realise you're doing. Forcing a normal reaction, like pretending to be excited when opening a gift, even if you're overwhelmed. Examples of autistic masking you might not even realise you're doing. Practicing your facial expression, rehearsing happy face in the mirror. Over-explaining something simple so no one thinks you're clueless. holding back your passion, pretending to be casual instead of excited about your interests, eating foods you don't like because you don't want to make a fuss at dinner, sitting politely even if your body just wants to curl up or sprawl out, timing your responses, counting in your head so you don't answer too quickly. Stop responses to questions like, I'm good, thanks, even when you're not. Ignoring background noise while internally every sound is frying your brain. Taking on a role in groups, the quiet one or funny one, so you have a script to stick to. Imitating handwriting or email styles so you look more professional or normal. Calling a shutdown just being tired because saying the truth feels too vulnerable. Over-apologising. Sorry for things that don't even need an apology just to stay safe. Changing your voice, accent, or pitch, sometimes mimicking others, even without realising you're doing it. What are people's thoughts on this? Is this familiar to people?
Yeah, being the funny one to lighten the moods with things, but I couldn't eat food that I wouldn't want to eat. I could never do that.
I'm kind of agreeing with what Jules put in the text there, that, my first thought was, well, do neurotypical people not go through a lot of this as well? I'll always put a counter argument to things. And in Jules' text, some of these can also be useful skills. So it's whether or not something becomes, a negative or a positive. But, and also I'm wondering how we teach ourselves these things, how we are taught to behave like this. What are the situations that create it? And then I got a wee bit fearful.
I think the autistic community gets its knickers in a twist about this. And there are emotional reasons behind that, because some people's trauma is deeply embedded and associated with their masking. Their masking has become such an extent to them that they have lost sense of their own selves within it. So there's an extreme version of masking that we recognise. But masking is a human behaviour. It is an adaptation behaviour. We are a social animal. We join the group and then we follow roughly what the group is doing. If there's a campfire and people are squatting around the campfire, we tend to go and squat by the campfire. If they are standing by the campfire, we tend to stand by the campfire. That is a version of masking in a very simple way. So I think we do get ourselves in a knickers in a twist about masking, because masking is a word that covers a lot of different social concepts, some of which are negative and hurtful and can be negative repetition patterns that really don't do us mental harm, but also masking is life skills.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think these were sort of softball examples of masking, although the author did say ways you're masking without even realizing it. And and if they are all related to that one person, we all have different ones. But I wanted to make a joke and say that all Canadians apologize for everything.
Robbie added that responding "I'm good," like "I'm okay," etc., is fulfilling more of a neurotypical social rule. I think sometimes because autistic people do so many different things to cope, sometimes we kind of confuse that some things that we do, some habits we get into is actually, generally used, not just autistic people. Although I do recognise some of the things that have been said, like pretending to not let background noise kind of bother you, like being in a busy place like a pub, etc., while trying to have a conversation. I do recall that a few times. In fact, I was doing that on Friday, at a family event. So, a lot of it is connected, but sometimes we kind of mistake for autistic things to what things are done in general society. But you can only know what you know and experience what you experience. And sometimes it's actually interesting when you get told or when you find out that some things that you do things to cope is actually done not by everybody but by so-called general society in many ways.
Yeah, I'm remembering old words that folk don't use so much now, like discretion and tact. A lot of folk don't like those words, but they were there for a reason.
So you're
I feel like,
describing. Sorry.
oh, just a short one. I feel like every time I say I'm fine, in my mind, I'm cringing because even the word fine is being misused then. Do you know what I mean? And I have a real word focus. So, but then that was just a small thing, like Canadians saying sorry. I that's it.
Using words as punctuations instead of their actual meaning. Sorry doesn't actually mean sorry. It's an utterance.
I used to call it a placeholder, like a little pause to gather your feelings.
The British start a conversation with "I'm sorry" to get the tension.
They could just say, I'm British.
I think we inherited more of the British than the French here, but it doesn't work well with when you do business internationally, particularly with the US. It really puts you at a disadvantage with any culture who doesn't understand what you're saying sorry is. I think they see it as a weakness.
Thanks everyone. That's us coming to the end of the broadcast tonight. Another great night of conversations, and it was, quite in depth as always. So thanks for everyone being involved tonight, and thanks to the people who shared those posts that brought out these interesting topics. There was a good mixture of different topics that we talked about tonight and quite in depth. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 24th of August 2025, which is part of the 555 Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is broadcast every Sunday from 5:55 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time. And I look forward to the next one. So goodbye from me, and I'll hand over to Jules.
That's great. Thank you, Harry. Great show as always. This is the few moments that we have to talk about what we do here at Autistic Radio and the charity we arrange, Autistic Association.